I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Amazing FBA, somewhere approaching 400 episodes and certainly podcasting for just over 4 years. And just when you think you've seen it all, there's some new exciting possibilities turn up in the Amazon world. So today, very, very excited to explore really, I think, a very new business model in some ways compared to private label, but also very, very interchangeable with or blendable with it, as far as I understand. So our guest today is Dan Meadors. He's a multi-million-dollar Amazon seller and founder of the Wholesale Formula. Dan, warm welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Michael. Looking forward to sharing with your audience, man.
If you're watching the video, I'm laughing now because, like, in case you're wondering which company you're from, the Wholesale Formula is just like casually streamed behind you 10 million times. So tell us, first of all, what do you mean by wholesale? We'll obviously get into your background and who you are and everything about how you became a multi-million-dollar seller. We've got to dig into that. But what do you mean by wholesale in the context of Amazon?
Sure. It's actually an interesting question because whenever we developed our course, it's almost like it makes our model difficult to explain. So what we mean by wholesale, or I'll start with what traditional sellers mean by wholesale and kind of how we made that evolution into the way we work. So traditionally speaking, wholesale is purchasing products in a business-to-business capacity. So typically a larger box, either a distributor or wholesale company, and then reselling those products at retail. So for us, that model didn't necessarily work initially, and it was. We'll jump into it with our story, but we didn't have the capital to compete with other sellers that were doing that. So we took a slightly different approach, and our model is directly connecting with a manufacturer and helping them increase the sales of their product on Amazon by being a retailer of those products. So where that varies a little bit versus your traditional wholesaler is that the common thread is that we both purchase products via wholesale. That's how we acquire our products. But typically, it's far more common for someone to purchase products and just be a seller of those products and not really work directly with the brands. It's the value in the relationship is I buy your goods and then I sell them. And whenever we were moving into the model, it wasn't effective for us. We didn't have a giant budget. We couldn't place larger orders. We couldn't access the discount tiers that we needed to. So what we did is we turned our focus to, instead of saying, we just want to sell your products, we looked at the ways that we could help them perform better in the marketplace. Because as everybody knows, Amazon is a massively growing marketplace. I think last year it was around 50 to 55% of all e-commerce sales in the United States. And whenever you think about the audience that they're reaching through their listings, it's very, very important that they're not only optimized and acquiring new customers, because the fact of the matter is there's going to be more people that see their product on Amazon in a given day than see it in any single store that they have ever stocked. Like the amount of foot traffic that walk into a store pales in comparison to the amount of people that can see your product online. And whenever we started thinking about that, it was like, wow, we could really provide a lot of value to these companies because we understand Amazon, we understand optimization, we understand how to have a professional, amazing experience. So we combined that with our ability to find great products and just started positioning ourselves in partnerships where we were working actively with the brand to grow their Amazon presence while we were also a retailer of those products.
Okay, so lots to absorb there. So the traditional resale, the wholesale, when you got in touch to get on the show, I thought, well, okay, wholesale, that's an interesting alternative model. I know there's a couple of members of the masterminds we've got in London who are pretty serious people. One of them's been doing a wholesale-based traditional kind of thing where they buy from distributors, as you say, quite high order quantities, getting price discounts because of that, and then retailing it. Gone through various iterations, has ended up on Amazon doing about, a couple of £1 million a year or whatever that is in US dollars, 2.5 or something. And then there's another member of the mastermind who's doing like 80% of his business probably is the wholesale stuff as well. And he's introducing more private label as a more defensible, more brand building. But what you're talking about is really quite a different model. So quite exciting. I mean, one of the things you mentioned is the capital requirements that are needed for that kind of business model. And indeed, of course, for private label, we were just talking about it off air, weren't we, just before we went on, that the numbers can end up quite big quite quickly. So before we dig into the details of how to do it, obviously sounds very attractive. What have you found? Why bother doing it? What results have you got from this that you thought you can get another way?
No, I mean, we can look at where my life is, and I don't want to say that it's easy to get here, right? But it is attainable. So the most amazing part of our business model is it's directly governed by systems and processes, which means that once you have someone who can competently fill that process, you don't really have to do it anymore, right? So in our business, we've worked through various models, and all those led us to the question of, does this business give us what we actually want? Like, you have to kind of decide early on in your business what your goals are. Is it to make is it just to make millions and millions and millions of dollars? Or is it to be able to provide yourself with an amazing lifestyle and that gives you real freedom? And because those are two starkly different things, right? Like, the composition of those businesses is vastly different. So early on in our careers, that was confusing for us, because we thought the path to freedom was the money that could be generated. Ultimately we've made some shifts and turns in our business that have re-engineered us to that idea and what we want out of our business. So, as it stands right now, if you do this business, you can set yourself up to like ours. So my day responsibilities on the Amazon side are nothing. Like, I don't have a day-to-day role in our Amazon business. We have employees. We have 2 domestic employees and 2 virtual assistants that are based in the Philippines that handle all the day-to-day operations for our Amazon account. Now, that's not to say like I don't have any involvement. To give you an example, we're always working back and forth with manufacturers to develop agreements. And our employees yesterday, this just happened yesterday, came in with a proposed agreement, asked me to review it and look at what we really want to extract out of that relationship, as well as the value we can deliver. So, I help them retool that agreement, but that's one time every 2 or 3 weeks whenever they run into a complicated matter. This business can be to be it's not truly passive version of income, but it can be a far more passive version than most people are used to, while also delivering a sizable amount of profit. Like our business typically produces, and I don't think we're a common case for what it's worth. I don't, and I'll touch more as we dive into the story. Like our business right now operates at about an average margin of about 20 to 25%. And that's net margin. Like, that's for us, that in terms of a cash flow business, think about it. I have probably 1 to 3 hours per week obligated to that business, and it produces me, if you're speaking in terms of ROI, it's producing 35 to 40% ROIs on a month-to-month basis. Like, honestly, I can't think of a better business model that gives you as much freedom as I'm allowed, that can produce that much profit. Because, like, if you look at other models, like, private label, there's a lot more direct input, right? Like, you have to make a lot more decisions in those models when you're developing a product or designing packaging or creating listings. Like, we don't have to do any of that. So the things that fall into regular course of business is taking an existing listing that's already performing really well and has an established baseline for sales and just making it better. And if we're doing that, if we're making it better, then we're solving the needs of our partners, and those are the manufacturers that we work with. But we're also making ourselves additional income and a steady, predictable stream of income, most importantly.
Again, lots to take in, but I mean, the first thing is defining what you want is a very, very good point. And I think most people, I do know some people are ravingly ambitious, and the business creators and the brand creators, they're a different breed. And I think I know some of those, and they're very exciting people. And it's a great thing to be if that's who you are. But I think trying to turn yourself into, Gary Vaynerchuk, if really what you want is not, as you said, not so much a passive income, but a much more effective use of your time in terms of generating cash flow. There's nothing wrong with that either. By the way, I think there's nothing wrong with just getting a day job if that's your thing. I mean, some people make a fetish of being an entrepreneur like it's a religion, and certainly in the States, but also in certain parts of the UK. Like I live in London, it's almost like a given that you should be an entrepreneur. And actually, that's not always the case. But I like the fact, clarifying what you want, but also the emphasis on systems and processes, I think is great. And I would suspect that half of your wins have come from the fact, not just the fact that it's the wholesale versus private label, and we'll dig into what that means, but the fact that you've systematized everything. Because even people doing several $1 million a year with private label, in my experience, a lot of them end up very, very hands-on, partly because they're the kind of people that want to be, but partly because they really haven't taken seriously enough the systematization piece. So it'd be great to dig into that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like whenever we were looking at it, it's, I didn't want to create myself a high-paying job. Like my goal was to spend more time with my kids and provide them with experiences that I didn't get to experience as a child. Like, and over the past, I can honestly say over the past 2 years that's been the most exciting thing. And my kids have got to do things that it's crazy. Like, one weekend, to give you an example, 1 week right before school started, I was like, tell me one thing you just really want to do. I don't care what it is. Just tell me what you want to do. And my daughter was like, you know what I would love to go to? She's 9 and I got a 9 and a 4-year-old daughter. And my 9-year-old was like, I would love to go to Los Angeles and go see Santa Monica Pier. So that day I called down at the office and I was like, hey guys, I'm not going to be in tomorrow or the rest of the week. And I literally booked a ticket to Los Angeles and took my daughters to Los Angeles for the rest of the week. And that's the kind of freedom that I've always wanted. I want the ability to help my kids truly experience life and also position them to have that mindset for freedom, right? Like I want them to be happy. And that's what this business provides. It provides the ability to walk away whenever I want. It provides the ability, another example is we decided earlier this year, and we tied some, a cool little promotion in with it, but that we were going to take our entire company on a vacation for 2 weeks to the Dominican Republic. Like, all of our employees and everything. And whenever we were there, we only had one rule, and it was we don't talk shop about our business. Like, we're there to have fun. And if you guys need to get stuff done, you can at the end of the day, we're there to have fun and grow as a team. And over that course of the 2 weeks, we never talked about our business a single time. It was funny. I was talking to you in the pre-show, and I told you I've not opened my Amazon account in 2 years, like personally, and to dive into it, because everything is a system. I'm able to get the exact information I want all the time and make decisions based on it. I don't have to dive deep. I don't have to be hands-on. And to me, that's the lifestyle I want. Is I want to be able to affect growth and affect change, but also live a life that provides a lot of value to myself and my children as well.
Okay, wow. So you're painting an incredibly attractive picture. So there's going to be two obvious questions. Is obviously the first one is like, how do we do this? But just before we get into that, I want to see where you came from, because if you started off a multimillionaire, this has not been much of a journey, obviously, right? So give us a quick background as to where you are, a few years ago before you came into this business model, and
Sure.
how life was for you then.
Well, I truly got started with this back in 2011. And I worked for an online retail company that sold Magic cards, Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, stuff like that on their website. And we saw incredible growth when I was there. So and I definitely played a fair role in that. Like I got to experience a lot of the business. I got to see a lot of the insights and how to build a business. And the owner is an absolutely amazing person. He's still actually one of my best friends today. So whenever I got a lot of experience in that business, and I was there after college for about 5 years. And we went from, $1.5 million a year in sales on our website to 25 million a year in that period. So it was, I got to see the staff grow from, I was the 13th employee to 200 people. So it gave me a lot of perspective on how to grow a business. But whenever we got started, it's kind of interesting. We got started in, I guess maybe June or July of 2011, whenever one of the chief officers in the company came in. And bear in mind, we live in a really small town. I think we have about 7,000 to 10,000 people. Like there's more cows here than humans. But whenever we got started, there's not a lot of jobs in our area that pay what he was getting paid. This guy was making well over 6 figures. And he came in one day and he's like, hey guys, I want to go ahead and give my notice. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? How is this happening? And he said he was making more money selling on Amazon part-time than he was at his job. And he's like, I would rather just wake up and work for my house and do what I want all day. And I was like, wow, no, I mean, it's really cool. So he kind of showed us a little bit about Amazon and got us started down that path. So we started with retail arbitrage. And in December of 2011, I ended up getting terminated from that job. And it was absolutely crushing. Like, I remember I went to my office because we at that point, we had a little office where we'd drop off all the stuff we were buying through retail arbitrage. And if you guys have retail arbitrage folks or people out there who don't know what that means, it just means buying things in a store and then reselling it online at a profit. We got started that way, and I had a lot of unfortunate events that kind of happened to me before I'd gotten fired. Like, I had a great job. I had, in theory, I made great money, but like I was always really afraid of debt because it ravaged my mom, like absolutely ravaged her. She overspent on credit cards, and I got to see just how tough that can be on people. And I was always terrified of it. So I would pay things off all the time. So like, I had bought my house, I had bought my car, bought my wife's car, paid her student loans off. And then like I had replaced the HVAC in my house. I had to replace a roof, which is super expensive. And basically, like, when I got terminated, my bank account was completely depleted. Like, I had about $3,000 or something like that in my bank account to support my family. And I had a brand new 1-year-old baby and, just all the bills you would expect. And God, it was crushing. Like, I went over there, I cried forever. And then I decided, like, I just have to be moving forward. And I decided I was going to tell my wife, because I didn't want to terrify her, that I quit my job. So I went home. I was like, hey, I'm really excited about this whole Amazon thing. And I quit my job today. And she was like, yes, go back and get it back. You need to go back today and get your job back. And I had to kind of like fake that bravado, right? Like, no, it's really, we're okay. I promise. Like, we're going to grow, but I didn't have the option to go get my job back. And we got started, and we utilized, because I couldn't use money out of our account because we only had $3,000. So I went and I got a little credit card for $600, and we started doing retail arbitrage. We would pay it up, go out, pay it off whenever we get our Amazon drops, and just grew our business pretty organically that way. And we did we were working our tails off. Like, and our budget grew really fast because we were making good product decisions. And within that first year, we did about $850,000 in sales and probably made a profit of $250,000. Like, it was a really good year for us, from actual nothing. And but as you know, with physical products, a lot of that profit is reinvested consistently into products. Like, we weren't able to just take money and set it to the side. Like, it was a constant reinvestment. So the next year, we decided we were going to work really, really hard, even harder, and try to make more money. And despite all the extra effort, like, we were probably working 70-hour weeks, we just, we weren't putting that much more money in our bank. It was, I think we ended that year at like $950,000 because we were using the same strategies, going out, finding our product. And I remember it was actually that Thanksgiving that it like really hit me. It was Black Friday here. I don't know if you guys have Black Friday in the UK. But Black Friday here is the biggest, the biggest shopping holiday of the year. Big discounts, crazy stuff for retail arbitragers. If you're not out there shopping on Black Friday, then you're just missing a whole massive opportunity. Well, in the United States, like, they start Black Friday early on Thursday, like at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or something like that, which means you have to miss Thanksgiving. And I remember that Thanksgiving dinner where I was getting ready to go out to work, and I was sitting there looking at my kids, and they were just like, you can't stay just for an hour. And like, I'm like tearing up thinking about it right now. And the whole time we were out on that trip, we were just talking about, it's this thing. What happens if I can't work 70-hour weeks? Like, my income goes down. So we decided to make a shift into other models, and we tried a few things and failed. Like, we opened up a retail store locally, and it was a terrible idea. It doesn't have enough foot traffic, and ultimately we sold it. And then we started a website that sold My Little Pony collectibles, and it was because we watched a cool documentary about My Little Pony, and we known that we'd been selling My Little Pony stuff a lot on Amazon. Like, every time we'd put stuff in stock, it would sell like crazy. And so we started a website. It was actually not terribly, it was reasonably successful. Like, it produced profit even in the early stages, but it wasn't a passion for us. It wasn't as scalable for us. Like, we didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have the knowledge to drive traffic to that specific website. We weren't marketers. We were sellers. So ultimately, we sold that business. We actually made a little bit of money, but not a lot whenever we sold it. But it still left us in that same position of having to grind our lives away and just for the dollars we were making. And we decided we would try private label. And our very first private label product was very, very successful. Like, that's one of the things we're pretty good at, is we've always had a pretty good knack for picking products. And that was it. We didn't have any skills. Like, we weren't great at creating listings. We weren't great at advertising our products, but we found a really good product. And we probably, that just off that one product, I mean, in the first 3 or 6 months, we probably made $200,000 in profit. So it was a real hit. I mean, it was a really, really good product and really well positioned. But ultimately, whenever competition started showing up, these competitors were far more skilled than we were. So they were outranking us, and that product eventually dropped off. And then we tried to launch subsequent products, and we had one that fell straight on its face immediately. We had another one that had moderate success. We had another one that had that was break even plus a few dollars. Like, and it's just not so. It wasn't consistent for us. Like, no matter what we did, we couldn't create consistency, and it was because we didn't have those skills. So then we started looking at other models that leveraged the same ideologies as private label, right? Like, the ideology of private label is, I create a product, it comes to me, then I'm just selling that product. And that was what I wanted. I wanted a way to scale my time. And we kind of found wholesale and didn't know how to do it. Like, had no idea what we were doing. It was kind of funny because I had the experience from my other job with wholesale just a little bit, but I had it from a different perspective. Like, every company in the space wanted to do business with us because we were an established company. Now, as in this new position, I didn't have any real marketable experience to talk to these people about. And we purchased a lot from distributors. So that was the first track we did, is we researched, how to start selling wholesale. And we Googled it, and it said, find a list of distributors. And we did that. Here's a list of shows. We figured out we might be able to go to a couple of them, and ultimately got started that way. And then we would get these gigantic catalogs of crap, and we would have to go through and determine if there were sellable products. And the vast majority of the time there wasn't, or the margin was really depressed. And it was just like, what? And, how can we make this work for us? And then we went to a trade show called ASD, and we spent, it was kind of funny because, like, it wasn't a good fit for us. Like, we were walking around the trade show. We didn't really know what we wanted. We had scanned the product to see what the sales rank was, how much margin we would have. And then we tried to negotiate, but it wasn't a comfortable thing for us. And ultimately, we ended up buying a bunch of products that weren't researched as well as they should be. And we lost money. And I remember going back to the office, and I was sitting there thinking, it's like, holy crap, man. Like, we just literally can't make money outside of grinding our lives away. Like, we just don't know how to do it. And I looked at Eric, and I was like, man, I just want to carry this one product. I picked some product up off my desk, and I was like, why do I have to call 55 distributors to see who carries this thing? And Eric was like, well, why don't we just call the company, and maybe they could tell us. So we called the company, and whenever we reached out, they were like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I'd love to set up I'd love to carry your guys' product. I'm a retailer. We sell online. Could you tell me which distributors carry your product? And they were like, well, we're happy to set you up an account directly with us and let you purchase the product directly. And we were like, what? That's a possibility. And then we expected, the next logical question was, so how much do we have to buy? And we expected this to be an astronomical amount, like, to work directly with the manufacturer. And they were like, oh, for our retailers, we have minimum orders of $250. And it was like,
that's crazy low. Yeah.
Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
Got their price. Yeah. Like, we got the price list. The prices were good. They had discount tiers that let us make even more money. So we end up placing like a $500, $700 order. Product comes in, we ship it out and start making money. And it was like, oh, wow. So it's this easy. So our next track was to find all these cool products that we might want to carry and start contacting manufacturers and say, hey, like, we would love to carry your product and just try to replicate that process. But we ran into more resistance. Like, we found our next hurdle. And it was, we would call these manufacturers and they would say, yeah, like, we're not looking for any other Amazon sellers. We have no interest in doing business with you. And it was like, why? Like, I want to buy your product. And they were like, well, our product's already being sold, man. Like, we've already got sufficient coverage in the Amazon channel. If you're telling me you're taking me to a new channel or something like that, I'd be happy to open you up. But I don't want to, I don't want to overcrowd that channel. And a lot of Amazon sellers hear about this kind of thing. And it was what those guys were saying made sense, but it didn't make sense to me at the time. And what they were saying is we don't want to put so much competition on our listings that it creates a race to the bottom situation where sellers aren't incentivized to have our best interest in mind. And that's what they were really saying. But to me, it was they were just missing out on sales, right? Like they weren't selling me a product when they could. And, as I called more companies, I started hearing that more and more. And there was this one company that I was really excited about. And it's like a supplement line that I'd taken. And, I'd had good results with it. I actually liked their product. And I'd sent them an email. And it was kind of funny because I didn't want to send them an email initially. Like I was trying to get accounts so I'd have references so I wouldn't feel like an idiot when I contacted them. And when I contacted them, he's the guy that they replied, we're not looking for any more Amazon sellers. So I decided to give this guy a call. When I called him, he the regional sales guy answered the phone. I still remember his name was Bob. And this was, 4 or 5 years ago. And Bob said, yeah, he's like, yeah, man, I would love to, I'd love to work with you. It's nothing personal, but we already have great coverage on our Amazon page. He's like, look at our sellers. We have E-Tails, we have River Colony Trading, we have like all these monsters. There's like 3 or 4 huge sellers that were doing $100+ million a year on Amazon. And he was like, so, from that perspective, what can you possibly offer me that I'm not already getting on Amazon? And so I was looking at his listing, and it's funny because, I did know his product. In this instance, I was like, Bob, man, I actually know your product. I use your product. It's like, here, let me I can send you a picture from my cell phone right now of me holding your product. Like this is something that's near and dear to my heart. So I actually understand probably more than most people. And I was like, let's take a minute to look at your listing. And I was like, if you just give me 5 minutes, I can show you why you need my help. So he goes to his listing and he sees his, and to him, it just looks normal because he has no idea what he's looking at. Says the product name, has a picture of the product and it's for sale and it's been selling well. So all indicators look good. And he's looking at it. He's like, yeah, man, it looks fine to me. I don't see any problems. I was like, all right, now let's go to one of your competitors' pages. And this was a page. It was funny because this brand was a private label brand that was created by a marketer, not just a person selling a product. And the page was completely optimized. It had amazing pictures. It had a great title. It had really vibrant bullets that sold the product. It had an amazing, well thought out listing, like that positioned the product really well. It had great reviews. Like it took him literally 3 seconds to see the difference. He was like, oh, wow. And I was like, right. So I was like, you know the quality of your product and I know the quality of your product. But as a consumer, which one do you buy? If you search for this phrase and you see these 2 listings, which one are you buying? And he was like, I would buy the competitor's product because I wouldn't have a clue. And I said, exactly. And, realistically, you're right. You have the best sellers on Amazon. You have the biggest and most awesome sellers on Amazon, but to them, you're just a number. Like, your account number 217. And you have a rep that, his day job's from 9 to 5. And that's between those hours, he's probably doing a great job doing the best he can to work with the 50 brands that he works with. But, from my perspective, you're right, man. I've only worked with one other company, but I've worked on Amazon for years and I understand the process. So what you get by working with me is you're my most important client and I'll make sure this never happens again. I'll make sure that your listing's always up to date, that the ads are always being ran, that, someone is there to care about your customer feedback. And all you have to do is let me carry the product. That's all you have to do. As you sell me the product, you get to make money. And if I don't start making these changes, man, and you start seeing results, just terminate me. Terminate me as a seller. And that guy was honestly happy to move forward there. It was just, he was like, no, I get it. It makes complete sense. So that was our first little model of this, of overcoming an objection. And, what did we do? We went out and we did every single thing we said we would for Bob. And I cultivated an amazing testimonial because that's what people really want. They don't want to know how it's done. The manufacturers, they just want the experience and they want the results that it provides. So, as a new seller, we jockeyed for position and out hustled the largest sellers on Amazon. And that's how our business has been created is, it's just replicating that process. Once we learned how to provide value there and we found stumbling blocks, we found, areas where we needed to clarify our message, areas where we needed to make improvements to be able to provide additional value. But over the course of time, that's our goal in the marketplace is we take existing brands and provide almost a private label touch to them so that they can experience growth on Amazon. And where this really pays dividends is you got to look at what these products are. These products despite their terrible listings, are already performing. Like they're already selling really, really well. And it's because they have a built-in audience, a baked-in audience that cares about their products. So when you're starting with that traffic base and you're able to incorporate a lot of the optimization strategies that private label folks use, it creates a real recipe for success in getting new customers to their listing and continuing to develop and grow their brand. And that's ultimately what our business model has turned into over the past, I guess 8 years at this point.
Amazing. So that's quite the story. So I just wanted to let it run because obviously, that's quite the journey. I mean, what's amazing is that you've gone through it. It's so often in life, I think, that what appears to be simple and is simple is not easily arrived at. You've spent a lot of time, sweat, money, stress to try lots of different business models. You tried retail, you tried your own website, you tried the private label thing, and you tried this sort of traditional going to distributors thing. And so you just basically ended up with a very simple model, which is you go to manufacturers and you offer to optimize their listings. And that's basically, as far as I can tell, it. Now, if I just said it overnight, it would just sound very easy. And I guess compared to the other things you're talking about, it is. But it's amazing how, sometimes if you're the pioneer, you have to go out there. They say pioneers come out with arrows in their backs. It sounds like you've taken your lumps to get to this level of simplicity. So although it is a simple business model, it's arrived at through a lot of trying the other things, which is really, really critical because everything sounds good on the surface of it, but you've actually been there and tested it, which is the difference, I think. One thing, therefore, I want to talk to you about now is we'll get into how to do this, I think, in our next episode, because we're just going to go crazy long otherwise. But what I'd love to do is just still have that big picture to start with, to put it in its rightful place. How does it compare to other Amazon sourcing models specifically then? So you've talked about your experience of arbitrage, you talked about your private label. Can we sort of summarize that into comparison points for people who are considering various different models of how to monetize Amazon?
Sure. No, I mean, if you look at the models like retail and online arbitrage, like they are scalable. They're just difficult to scale. Like they don't have the same output in terms of scale, right? Like, because everything you do is direct input. So if you go get a product or you go scout a product, you actually physically go do that. You place, if it's online, you're researching your products to place an order, and it's just incredibly hard to scale. And there's a lot of limitations there. Like, number one, there are brands that don't want you to carry their product and will file, infringement claims and all the other issues. Number two, there's just so many individual decisions, and it's not based on a replenishable thing. Like in my model in wholesale, whenever I find a product, like I have to do that same upfront work to find good products. But once I find one, it continues to be successful for years, right? Like I place my initial order, we sell through that product, and the next step in the process is picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, I would love another order of this product." So it's it reduces the complexity of your supply chain versus traditional retail and online arbitrage, and really streamlines that into a scalable series of processes. So that's one of the biggest benefits versus that model. And I would kind of lump other models in there like thrifting and stuff like that, because they have similar issues in their supply chain. Anytime that you're not consistently reordering the same product, you're having to do a lot more analysis, and it's a lot more inefficient. Now, if you look at it versus, say, a model like private label, I think they're relatively virtually the same model, except that private labelers have to have an additional set of skills. They have to be able to create a good listing. They have to be able to effectively market and launch that listing to drive traffic to it. Whereas in wholesale, I start with an existing listing. I start with an existing a baseline for sales, and I just simply try to expand that. Right? I'm not creating my IP. I'm not bringing a new product to the market. Like, I'm literally taking something that exists and just makes it better. So it's, private label, I think, has a lot of upside. Like you have the ability to create your brand, but there's a lot of volatility and there's a lot of risk. Like, all brands you create don't work out, and the upfront investment cost into those brands can be massive sometimes. Like if you're, in a lot of instances. One of my really good friends has a pretty substantial private label business. They do about $20 million a year. And I asked him, what is your typical success rate on a product? And he said, well, if you define, you can define success varying ways. Like we can say that we recover funds. He said that's a different level of success, or that we continue carrying the products for a long period of time afterwards and they produce profit. And he said, that if you look at that, he said that's kind of our barometer for success, is what makes it past that 6-month point for us. And he said it ultimately is about 25% of their products. Now, the payoff on those products is big. Whenever he has one that continues to roll for 6 months, a year, 2 years, like the payoff is massive on those products, and he owns the IP related to it. But to get there, generally he spends, he said an average product to launch a product on average cost him between $10,000 and $15,000. So he's spending $30,000 to $45,000 in discovery on average to hit his mark of creating a successful product. And bear in mind that they've done this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and that's been their success rate. So, from that perspective, there's just extra skills that are required. Like I'm always starting with a base in wholesale, and my capital requirements are so much less that if you have those skills, if you have the skills to be successful in private label, those translate directly because you're applying them to the brands you're working with. Now, I think the difference, the complications in the model for a lot of private labelers that would be looking at this would be that you're competing for the buy box, and that's if you're looking at it on the face, that presents a problem, right? But really, we don't compete for the buy box. Like the vast majority of brands I work with, I'm one of our sellers, and there are rules in place to prevent price fluctuation because they care about how their product's perceived. They don't want their product sold like a commodity. They want their product to retain its value. So whenever you're investing into those brands that really kind of protect their IP and care about their presence, you don't see that same shift. Like I can look at a listing and say, all right, there are 3 sellers here, including myself. I'm roughly speaking, I'm going to get about a third of the sales if our price is the same. So whenever we're working with those types of brands, like I can take that sales number and just immediately discern what my equity is, like what part of those sales that I'm going to own. And it makes it, from our perspective, it makes it a very, very easy cash flow business because I look at something, I say, okay, my cash outlay here is, say $2,000, and my return on investment is 30%, for example, which means, within a month's period of time, I turn $2,000 into $2,600, and I just replicate that process over and over and over. And that's the simplicity in our model, right? Like for a private labeler to expand their business, they have to go out, they have to create an entirely new line, go through that launch process, and whether the product's successful or not, that's it's a hell of an investment. Whereas let's say that, my process, I go look for a product, I find a product I like, I call the manufacturer. They're like, all of our current manufacturers are based inside the United States. So we're not importing. Now, same's true. Like we've worked with UK brands and Canadian brands and Chinese brands. Like we worked with a full gamut, but you can build your business the way you want. And so we contact a domestic brand, say, hey, we'd love to carry this product. And typically that product is, we're able to place an order, once we're able to get the account, we're able to place an order within a day and have that product at the Amazon warehouses within the week. So our time to market is literally from finding a product to selling the product is typically 7 days, which is, a much shorter than your typical private label window. Another thing is my order is literally only a month's worth of inventory. I'm not having to invest into ads. I'm not having to invest into all the other stuff. So whenever, I place a $2,000 order for product and my expected return is $2,600, like I hit really close to that mark every single time because I know my cost. I know what I sell the product for, and I know that I'm not having to absorb other costs in the interim. So it makes it a lot cleaner in terms of scaling and creating cash flow. I think it's also the kind of like for the people that are really good at private label and for what it's worth, like I feel like we've got those skills now. Like we have products in the pipeline and stuff like that too, but it's taken years to develop. And even if we become let's say we become amazing private labelers tomorrow, I would continue to do wholesale. And it provides such a diversity into our portfolio. Like it really does manage a lot of our risk, but it's also just such an easy cash flow engine. It's like, even if you're a great private labeler, what are you doing constantly? You're looking for private label opportunities. Bear in mind, every time you look past a product, every time you skip over a product, that's a wholesale opportunity that you could be capitalizing on and making money on potentially within 7 days. And realizing, amazing returns when you're talking about potentially 30 and 40% are a month over month returns on your cash. Like that's a substantial growth option for your business. Now, another thing that a lot of private labelers do inside of our community is they, a lot of the goal for private label is to create the product on Amazon and then develop traffic outside of Amazon to solidify the brand, like maybe through your own Shopify site or something like that. So a lot of the folks that are in that brand development phase, they don't have enough products to fill out a store. So what they do is they would create their Shopify store with centered around their product, and then fill in gaps with wholesale products that fit and are able to support the sales of their product. So it's, for us, it's always I just see our model as one of those models that you can create based on systems that can support pretty much any existing business and provide a scalable avenue to grow